Hello, everyone. Dr. Scott Gray here, host of Top Minds, where we bring you top minds in healthcare, in leadership, and business. Today, we're going to dive into lessons in leadership, motivation, and success with Orlando Magic founder, Pat Williams. But before we do, just a quick message from our sponsor. This episode is brought to you by GME Digital, that's Gray Marketing Enterprises, where we completely run your healthcare business marketing to drive more patients to you so you can focus on providing the best care possible. If you've ever thought, how can I see more of the perfect patients who need my help, contact us today. You can email support@gmedigital.com with any questions, or go to gmedigital.com to learn more about our events, which we normally hold at Disney World and focus a lot on leadership lessons from Walt Disney himself, which leads me right into our guest that we have today. Pat Williams is a basketball Hall of Famer. He was co-founder and senior vice president of the Orlando Magic. And Pat has had an integral part in NBA history, not only bringing the NBA to Orlando, but he's traded for Julius Erving, Moses Malone, Penny Hardaway, and also drafted Charles Barkley, Shaquille O'Neal, and many more. And he's one of America's top motivational speakers. He's addressed companies such as Coca-Cola, Disney, IBM, Nike, just to name a few. And he's the author of over 85 books. And his most recent title is Lead Like Walt. And he was the author of my favorite book on leadership that I read at least once a year, called How to Be Like Walt. Pat, it's an honor to have you on today.
Hey, Doc, thanks a million. Look forward to chatting with you.
Definitely. So I know that early on, Pat, you started in baseball, but then eventually moved into bringing a franchise to Orlando with the Magic that we all know so well. How did that happen? How did that idea start to move into doing this whole franchise and bringing it to Orlando?
Well, it was actually a business leader down here years and years ago. His name was Jimmy Hewitt. And Jimmy and I had talked at great length about the NBA in Florida. I was the general manager of the 76ers at the time. And eventually, Jimmy said, I'm ready to do this if you'll come down and head it up. So I had a big decision to make. Do I resign my position with the Sixers and move down to Orlando with my family, attempting to try and convince the NBA to put an NBA franchise here in Central Florida? This was back in 86, 87, when Orlando was a far cry from what it is today.
Right.
And so we did it, and eventually the NBA liked the idea of having two franchises in Florida, and that's how the Miami Heat came about and how the Magic came about in Central Florida. And I think it's worked out very, very well. The state of Florida has become a very, very good basketball state.
Yes, absolutely. Now, in bringing a franchise like that and dealing with the NBA, what were some of the biggest challenges that you had to overcome in getting the Orlando Magic here to Orlando?
Well, challenge number one was to convince the community here that we could do this. Major League Sports had never been here in Central Florida. And Florida certainly was not known as a basketball hotbed. So our first job was to convince the community that we could do this. And so we had to keep selling them and asking them to step up and express their support. And that support, as it turns out, was really overwhelmingly positive. It was terrific, and that made a big imprint on the NBA's thinking. And then we had to get an arena built. We had to convince the NBA to look at Orlando, not at that moment, but more down the road because of the tremendous growth here. And that's all turned out to be true. And so eventually, the community believed and the league believed, and the next thing you know, they graded us a team. It was a great moment for this community, and continues to be a great moment. And I think it's helped open the door to other sports ventures here in Central Florida, like Major League Soccer and big-time college football and so forth.
Yeah, definitely. Now, in convincing the community, that sounds like a very big task to take on. What were some of the steps that you guys did to get that feedback and convince the community?
Well, we told the community that there was no track record here of sports, so we would have to start from scratch. And so we set up a plan and asked them to make a commitment, $100 commitment on a future season ticket. And over a period of months, we had $100 deposits on 14,000 season tickets.
Wow.
That got the league's attention. That's really, because that was almost unheard of at the time. Nobody could even imagine that. And as a result, Orlando stayed in the running. There were other cities vying to get a team, an expansion team. And that 14,000 number really stuck with the league. They were very impressed with that, and we've got to keep Orlando alive here. You know, there's something going on down there in Central Florida.
Absolutely, and that sounds like an amazing way to pre-sell and get that feedback from the community. It seems like in the future NBA doing this, doing other franchises, did they ever copy this model of what you did to try to do the same thing in other areas? Well,
the expansion that was the major expansion area. They later expanded into Toronto and Vancouver.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, expansion pretty much came to an end after these four teams came in the 87, 88, 89 period. We're doing the same thing now. We're trying to bring Major League Baseball to Orlando, and we're following the same format that we did 34 years ago. We're asking people. We have websites now, and we're asking people to go up to the website orlandodreamers.com and register there that you'd be interested in a season ticket plan at some point. And we're following that same format in an effort to convince Major League Baseball that Orlando would be a good site.
Yeah, very, very good. So what's the plan on this? How soon are you guys trying to get this done with the Orlando Dreamers?
Well, we're encouraged. We've got about 12,000 people that have gone up there, and that's in about 2.5 months. So we're encouraged by their response. We're going to keep pushing people to go up there. I don't know what the eventual number will be, but we are encouraging people to go up there. Almost 12,000 have done it. You've got to multiply that by 2 because nobody just buys one ticket. Mm-hmm. And many companies would buy 4, 6, 8 tickets. Who knows? So those numbers are moving up nicely. And will continue so, and that's going to be our argument with Major League Baseball that this community can do it, can be a good baseball city.
Yeah, that's great. Well, good luck with that. And so if you're interested, if you're in the Orlando area or in Florida, go to orlandodreamers.com to express your interest if you want Major League Baseball in Orlando. That sounds great. We'll switch gears here a little bit. And one thing that you've mentioned before, Pat, because as I mentioned, your book, How to Lead or How to Be Like Walt, is one of my favorite books of all time. And one of the things that you've said is that you felt mentored by Walt, even though you didn't know him. And, I kind of feel similar. He's one of my favorite business leaders that I follow. What did you mean by that and feeling mentored by Walt? And what has that meant to you in your business?
Well, we all need mentors, and we usually think of a relationship over lunch and so forth, but we can be mentored by the most admirable people of all time. As you read the scriptures, you can be mentored by Jesus, mm-hmm. and you can be mentored by George Washington as you study and read and really absorb his life lessons. Same thing with Abraham Lincoln and Mother Teresa. And John F. Kennedy, for example, and the great coaches, Bear Bryant or Vince Lombardi. You can have as many mentors as you want simply by studying their life. A quick example, if you could have a choice of having lunch with General Colin Powell or reading his autobiography, I would say read the autobiography, because he poured everything he had into that book, and you're going to get a lot more out of the book than an hour lunch. So,
right, yeah, you'll get a lot more depth, for sure.
Studying these great leaders. Now, Walt Disney comes right into that. I moved here in '86. I got Disneyized, which can happen, and I became particularly fascinated with the life of Walt Disney himself. And I kept running into senior Disney executives who had worked with him back in California. And I would always ask them about Walt and take notes just to learn about this man. And eventually that process kept growing, and that led to this book, How to Be Like Walt, that came out years back. And I was fortunate that we did it when we did, because a goodly number of Walt Disney's associates were still living. They're almost all gone now.
Yeah.
And I couldn't possibly do that book now. But it was so fascinating to talk to so many people who had worked with Walt and had come to know him and had been under his tutelage, under his leadership. And that led to that book, How to Be Like Walt. But there was always something that was still stuck in my mind, and that was Walt Disney, the leader. What was it about this man that allows his company to this day to flourish in a way that maybe Walt Disney couldn't even fathom? And it comes down that Walt was a great leader. And so in this new book, Lead Like Walt, we put Walt under the microscope and really study him as a leader and what it was that made him such a strong leader, such an admirable leader. He was far from perfect, but as it turns out, he had leadership skills that we can all learn from.
What would you say makes Walt different than other leaders? What were some of his unique abilities?
Well, his most unique ability was his vision. Walt had the ability to see the future before it got here. Walt saw further down the road than most people. And so, as you look at his life and his career, he envisioned, he envisioned a full-length animated film, which was almost unfathomable for people. It came out in the late 1930s. It was Snow White. And to this day, it's just still a remarkable film. He saw, up at that point, cartoons could only last 8 minutes, and then the world was going to fall apart. He envisioned Technicolor. He envisioned the use of television when most people were fearful of it. And then he envisioned this incredible theme park, which turned out to be Disneyland. Nobody else could picture it, including his brother and his organization, his best friend Art Linkletter. None of them could picture it. But in Walt's mind, he saw the whole thing. And then years later, he thought, we need that same park on the East Coast. Because those huge population bases east of the Mississippi, well, they're not getting out to California that much. And he envisioned this whole thing being reproduced and beyond in Orlando. And in 1963, when it all came about, Orlando was a very, very small Florida city. But Walt took a private plane ride over Central Florida, and he envisioned this whole thing right there. He did. And then the saddest part of the story is Walt died young. He was 65. December of '66. And he said to his son-in-law, I really feel we can accomplish more in the next 20 years than we've accomplished in everything before that now.
Wow.
I often think about that. What would that have been like if Walt had lived till his mid-80s? He had one major fault, and that was cigarettes. But back in those days, everybody smoked. And he died of lung cancer. But at 65, boy, the guy accomplished so much, and it continues on to this day. Walt is still living in the minds of most people, and certainly those people that work at Disney World. They still see Walt around the corner. But Walt was a visionary, and I think that was his greatest strength. And most leaders, great leaders, are visionaries. You can't lead well if you don't know where you're headed, and if you don't know what your goals are, and if you don't know what you're trying to accomplish. Great leaders see the finished product clearly in their minds, and then they work backwards, putting those pieces in place. I can already see opening day at Dreamland Field here in Orlando. The Orlando Dreamers are opening. It's 2028, and they're opening against the Yankees. It's April 1st. 40,000 people are jammed into Dreamland Field here, getting ready for the first pitch. And that ballpark is just vibrating. I can see it all. Now we got to put the pieces in place to turn that vision into reality. Does that make sense, Scott?
Absolutely. I love just hearing you talk about this, and especially from someone who got to talk to so many. I'm so thankful you did How to Be Like Walt when you did, so you could speak with all the people who knew Walt personally. I once got the opportunity to speak with Bob Gurr, and I took it because I wanted to talk to people that had worked with him. And, I remember in your book, Art Linkletter told him not to do Disneyland, right? And he wouldn't even invest money in the land. And then he told him not to do Walt Disney World. And it's like this vision you're talking about. Do you feel like vision can be learned, or is that just something that's natural? Obviously, Pat, we know you're a visionary with everything you've done. You can see Dreamland Field. Can that be learned, or is that something that just is part of someone?
Oh, I think you can learn it. I don't think we come into this world, as automatic visionaries. I think it can be learned. Mm-hmm. But when you study every great leader, they were fueled and they were driven by this vision. For example, George Washington's vision was a new nation, independent of Great Britain's rule. And that's what kept him going during the 8 years of the Revolutionary War. Abraham Lincoln's vision in the White House in the 1860s was one nation, not two. Mm-hmm. And during the early days of World War II, Winston Churchill's vision was a world free of Nazi oppression. And Martin Luther King's vision was a nation where we would not be judged by the color of our skin, but by the content of our character. And John F. Kennedy's vision, he expressed it very clearly in the early 1960s when he said, I believe this nation should set a goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to Earth. And then, before the decade was out, in 1969, we heard these words: Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. And that night, somebody went to Mr. Kennedy's gravesite and left a note. Mr. Kennedy, the eagle has landed.
Hmm.
So you see, it's vision really that fuels every great leader. And when you study them, you'll find that behind it all, there's this vision that they have, and that propels them to do these remarkable things.
Definitely. And so with that, I feel like when there's a vision like that, it's hard to think about now, how big of a deal that was when Kennedy said, we're going to land someone on the moon, because at that point, literally it seemed impossible, right? It seemed like there's no possible way this is going to happen. And I'm guessing that, there's a lot of people around him, just like Walt, saying, you can't do this. This isn't going to work. And you may have had some of that with the magic. What do you see propelling people, whether it's, taking a risk or, being able to continue on with the vision in spite of all of the negativity around them, and to get people, excited about it and past those negative thoughts of this impossibility?
Oh, listen, there are going to be negative thoughts. There's going to be negative reaction to every visionary. During the Revolutionary War, there were many, many, many who said, let's just stay subservient to England.
Mm-hmm.
And many people during the Civil War said to Lincoln, just let the South go. Just let them go. Let them have their own country. And there were many at the start of World War II who said, just settle with Hitler. Just go ahead and concede. And so you see, visionaries are always told, this won't work. You can't do this. This isn't going to make it. What are you doing wasting your time? But without visionary leaders, think where our world would be.
Yeah, just the examples you've given. I mean, the Civil War, World War II. I mean, where would we be? The United States of America may not be, and that's looking at those that group of people. I mean, it's almost like it was the perfect group of people that were there at the right time to make those decisions and have that vision to move forward with that, because that's how many people today would put their life on the line to do something great. And I think that what you're saying about that negativity, I think that's where a lot of people quit, right? I think there's a lot of amazing things, and it's actually one of the reasons I think that Epcot didn't become what Walt really wanted it, because Walt had that vision, and I know on his deathbed he was outlining it on the ceiling for Roy, explaining how everything was gonna be, but it literally, Epcot, the way he wanted it, died when he did, because no one could carry on that vision and get past all of the, we can't do it for this reason and can't do it for that reason.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, he was a visionary, the likes of which the world has never seen. But I'll tell you, another great visionary was Ronald Reagan. And from the time he got into politics, his vision was a world free of communism. And he was once asked if he had a strategy. And he said, well, I do. We win, they lose. And then he added, what do you think of that? And so eventually, we heard Reagan's voice, General Secretary Gorbachev, if you seek peace, if you seek liberalization for Eastern Europe, come here to this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, open this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. Well, eventually the wall came down and communism died, and Mr. Reagan was proven to be right, but that was his vision. Great leaders are visionaries. So we need a vision for our own life. As parents, we need a vision for our children. We need to constantly be talking to our children about what we envision for them. You know, even when they're very young. I can envision you, you know, as a great artist one day, or I can envision you as a top-level scientist. You know, when we study our children and see what some of their interests are, I can envision you as a terrific coach. The way you know, you're already coaching your teammates, you know. We plant that vision in the minds of others so that they can go and proceed and go after that vision.
Absolutely. And I think that we, you know, a lot of us can go back in our mind and history to remember that one teacher or that one coach that, you know, planted those seeds inside of us to become who we became. And I love that. And let me just jump in. We'll shift gears a little bit here as we'll get into wrapping things up here. But I just want to touch on this. Pat, do you have 19 kids? Is that the correct number?
We do have a big family. We adopted 14 children over a 10-year period years ago. They came from 4 foreign countries. The children are all grown. The oldest is 47. The youngest is 34. They've presented us with 18 grandchildren now. And so we're full bore into the grandparenting business. International adoption is not for everyone, but in our case, it was something that we felt led to do, felt the Lord was leading us. And these kids have provided us with an extraordinarily fascinating life. I guess that's the best way to put it.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And so obviously you said you felt led. One of my old pastors did the same thing. He was adopted himself, and he's adopted. They have 4 of their own, 5 or 6 now, adopted from international adoption. You know, was there something in your life that just made you feel led to do that? Did you meet someone? How did that kind of start getting into the international adoption?
Well, my wife wanted to do it. And for 10 years, she kept talking about it fervently, and I just couldn't understand it. I didn't want any part of that. We had 3 birth kids, and I was running the 76ers, and life was good. But at the 10-year mark, it was obvious that this desire of hers wasn't going away. And so I had to become proactive and get moving. So we ended up learning about 2 little girls, 2 and 3 years old, in South Korea. And we were able to adopt them. We were able to get them. And then I became absolutely hooked. And any time we heard about other children in other countries, we said, we can do it. What's 2 more?
So yeah, once you get to a certain level, it's like, what's 2 more?
What's 4 more? You know, there's 2 more in Brazil. You know, we just kept saying yes. There was no master plan. We kept at it, and you know, and there were other children we tried to get and couldn't. I mean, I guess you could say I was really out of control on this. But I became absolutely fanatical about adopting children from other countries. Well,
I love
we finally settled at 14, and the total with all of the kids is 19, and makes for a lively Christmas.
Yes, it does. Well, congratulations on all the grandkids, and I'm sure that, you know, brings a joy to you guys like nothing other. So very exciting. Well, let's wrap this up, Pat. I really appreciate your time. If you could share, you know, let's say your top leadership lesson, and then where people can go to learn more about you, your books, and that kind of thing. So what's your number 1 lesson you'd share with people that are trying to be better leaders?
Well, let me just put it this way. 7 things one must do to be a leader right and true. Have vision that is strong and clear. communicate so they can hear, have people skills based in love, and character that's far above, the competence to solve and teach, and boldness that has fearless reach, a serving heart that stands close by to help, assist, and edify. If people want to learn more about the books, go up to Amazon under Pat Williams, and you'll see a pretty good summation on the number of books that we've written. The total is actually 113, Scott. I don't know how that happened.
Wow. Are you there, Pat? We may have lost Pat. So, are you there, Pat? Okay, so, hey, if you want to learn more, type in Pat Williams at Amazon.com. So appreciative, Pat, for coming on today. What an amazing lesson in that. I would re-listen to that last part he just said about being a great leader. I'm going to memorize that. That is really, really amazing. So hope you guys enjoyed today. Make sure you go out, get some of his books. I love How to Lead Like Walt, one of the best, and we actually just got Lead Like Walt. So, Pat, this has been awesome. And if you're in Orlando, make sure you go to OrlandoDreamers.com to request your season tickets there. So thank you, everyone, for paying attention today and joining us, and we'll see you next time. Bye.